Among the warships are Japan's two super battleships. The monsters Musashi and Yamato. The biggest battleships ever built. Simultaneously, the enemy's main effort will come from the south. Japan's battleships and cruisers will steam north toward Leyte from Singapore. The warships will split into two groups, one force sailing through the Sulu Sea and Surigao Strait and approaching Leyte Gulf from the south. The other half sailing through the Sibuyan Sea and San Bernardino Strait and coming down on Leyte from the north.
They have a southern and a northern pincer composed of battleships and cruisers that will hopefully meet up off of the island of Leyte and there crush the invasion convoys.
When Japanese and American forces collide, the numbers of ships involved and the hundreds of miles separating major battle areas will distinguish the struggle for Leyte Gulf as the largest naval battle in the history of mankind. Now, on the morning of October 24th, 1944, the American landing on the island of Leyte has been underway for 4 days. And it's with this attack fleet that the monster battleships Yamato and Musashi are present. Both vessels pack 18.1-inch guns and are designed to sustain a staggering level of punishment. These ships represent the heart of the enemy's main effort. Spotted by scout planes earlier, now at 10:30 a.m., the center force comes under attack from American bombers. They are aircraft from two other carriers in Admiral Halsey's task force, USS Intrepid and USS Cabot.
Helldivers and Avenger torpedo planes from USS Intrepid and USS Cabot swoop into this Japanese task force. They score hits on a cruiser and 3 battleships, including the mega battleships Yamato and Musashi.
The monster warships absorb the hits in stride and maintain speed. But a second wave of planes from Intrepid, along with aircraft from USS Essex and USS Lexington, soon arrives and concentrates its attack on Musashi. The gutsy pilots brave a sky torn with flak. The American bombers score 10 additional hits. Musashi feels it this time.
They get bomb hits and torpedo hits on the Musashi that weaken it and slow it down.
When the smoke clears, Musashi is listing to port and struggling to make 15 knots. And the monster warship's troubles are far from over. few hours later, in mid-afternoon, USS Enterprise pilots get a crack at her. A wave of bombers from both Enterprise and USS Franklin buzzes in, determined to put Musashi beneath the waves.
As our dive bomber and torpedo bomber pilots came in, they could see the fattest target they'd ever seen, and they wanted to take her down.
The bomber pilots hold their dives longer than they normally would have. They press in very close before releasing. The tactic is successful.
Every one of their torpedoes hit, all 8 of them. 11 out of their 18 bombs hit their mark. Both squadrons turn and pull away. The Musashi is stopped, down by the head, and burning.
So the Enterprise Air Group participates in the final destruction of one of the two most powerful battleships in the entire world.
Musashi will finally slip beneath the ocean surface shortly after dark, but she has lived up to the estimates of her toughness.
The Americans were absolutely astounded at the amount of damage that she took before she finally rolled over and sank.
The tenacious attacks by American aircraft rattled the Japanese commander, Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita, and he turns his fleet around, if only temporarily. He's been so heavily engaged by wave after wave of American bombers, he attempts to withdraw beyond the range of the U.S. carriers.
He had fallen for the Japanese decoy. The force protecting the U.S. landing was now severely weakened. But the commander of this force now inadvertently compounded the problem. Unaware that Halsey had taken off, he sent his battleships to ambush the southern arm of the Japanese pincer. It looked like a spectacular success. But then disaster struck. The northern arm of the Japanese pincer had only pretended to retreat. Under cover of darkness, it turned round and headed back. It then attacked the hugely depleted force protecting the US landing. Only a handful of small escort carriers and destroyers faced the Japanese super battleship Yamato and 3 other battleships. It was now the turn of the Americans to put up a desperate fight. The Japanese tactic had caught the US aircraft unprepared. They were armed with high explosives for land operations rather than armor-piercing bombs for ships. then, just as it seemed the Japanese must break through, they suddenly turned tail. Their commander had worried he was sailing into a trap. Meanwhile, to the north, Halsey's headlong rush to intercept the Japanese decoy force finally paid off. On October the 25th, 1944, all 4 Japanese carriers were sunk. The Battle of Leyte Gulf had completely finished off Japan's once proud navy. There was now little hope of holding back the American advance. For Japan, it was time for desperate measures. The stage was set for a terrible climax to MacArthur's plan.